I think there's a certain emotional payoff, but I think I would describe that emotional payoff as really depressing. Because one of the things that I noticed about season three, which I thought was brilliant and is one of my favorite parts of season three, is I think I've mentioned to you that though I grew up in a decently urban environment, which is pretty the place where I grew up, Roanoke, Virginia, is a pretty like it's technically the South, but I don't really feel like the South. Kind of feels like a small city environment. There's a lot of like pretty rich neighborhoods around here, and really good areas. And then I spent my last 2 years of high school in the middle of nowhere, Trailer Park, West Virginia, and it was such a stark contrast that it allowed me to see a lot of really interesting things about that particular demographic in America and where it was developing. And it it was fascinating to see David Lynch explore those same patterns where because he didn't just make season three and then get a space to comment on what a lot of communities what a lot of sort of small town communities have become nowadays, but he got to show such a stark contrast because he'd already explored a lot of that community and a lot of the way that it moved and the way that it breathed and the way people were and acted in 92, and then got to do it again in 2017. And I think that was really huge because that was one thing that I had noticed living in that small town community is I got the feeling that though this used to be a really cute, really well connected, really safe place to live about 20 years ago because it had such a strong sense of community, but for whatever reason, it's just become hedonistic and very selfish and very people just became cut off from each other somehow. And what he did with Twin Peaks Washington really hit home for me because it mirrored what I saw in Monroe County, West Virginia. And so I thought that the emotional payoff, for me at least, I guess, was feeling like I was heard in those observations in the way that Twin Peaks changed over time, and the way in which the characters who were these, like, especially when we're talking about like Ed and Norma, and when we're looking at people like Sarah's parents, like, or specifically, or sorry, Laura's parents, specifically Laura's mom. You're looking at these salt of the earth human beings, and same thing with Andy and what was her name, Lucy. You're looking at these salt of the earth human beings who are just very simple people with very kind, big hearts, and you see them become old and slower, and the world doesn't care about them or like them because they're not fast or modern, um, and and they sort of get left behind and they sort of degrade. And what was beautiful about them before, though it was present in the older generation of Twin Peaks in 92 because they were able to sort of what was dignified about being an older member of the community was recognized and valued in Twin Peaks in 92. Now it's sort of I don't want to say vilified, but it's treated as not particularly valuable, and just somewhat what's the opposite of stimulating? I guess numbing. Um, and it was really interesting to see that, and it was really heartbreaking to see that. But that was one of my favorite things about season three, because he nailed it, and it breaks your heart in such a perfect way because he nailed it. You know what I mean? Seeing these characters that you love and that you respected for being who they were, and just watching the world not give a shit about them.